Alrighty, so today in the driver's seat we have Gideon Cordover, who's a Greens councillor in the Kingborough Council.
That's right.
Which is just south of Hobart, is that right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful area just south of Hobart. We've got Taroona, Kingston, Blackman's Bay, all the way down the Channel, Bruny Island.
Yep.
Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. And where are we right now?
So right now we're at Howden. We're sitting on the beautiful Tinderbox Peninsula, and this is a really important area for biodiversity and conservation. You've got your 40 spotted pardalote and all kinds of really important and sadly threatened endangered species.
Yep.
But it's such a beautiful area, and it's a real joy to be in Kingborough.
Yeah, and it's a cracking day as well.
We're very lucky, actually. It was kind of snowing yesterday. I wanted to test out the Tesla in the snow, but yeah, it's probably for the best.
Probably for the best that we're down here. But there is an amazing view of Kunanyi on the way back, and it's got a very nice sprinkling of white snow on the top. So hopefully we'll see that on the way back in. All right, so you're all set to go.
Good to
go. Basically, that right-hand paddle, just try hard up with your foot on the brake. That's your reverse.
Okay.
And then hard down, we'll put it into drive.
All right. Now, I'm told that the speed limits around here are 200 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, I believe so.
So we're good to go.
Yeah.
I love how silent it is.
Yeah, you never forget. You never forget. Yeah, you might just need to reverse back a bit. When you first drive an electric vehicle, you never forget that first moment where you take off and there's no sound at all.
Yeah, it's great.
It's kind of surreal.
Now, I've been telling everyone that these can't crash. Is that strictly speaking true from a technological standpoint?
You can still crash them.
Oh, okay. I didn't bring my my speed helmet.
Your helmet. It's a good way to think of it is like the technology has your back,
yep.
Or it'll kick in. It'll kick in as much as it can in a situation.
Okay.
And it's good to look at it like statistically. So statistically, this car is 10 times less likely to get into an accident because it will react.
Yep.
It'll respond to things around it. That doesn't mean it's 100% perfect or perfect, but it is 10 times less likely than a normal car.
And that's even if you're watching Netflix or the video games that we were looking at earlier. No, maybe that doesn't count.
Technically, you can't. So at the moment, with the current software, you can't watch Netflix and YouTube or play video games while you're driving. But I think with how fast autonomous driving is going, I think in a couple of years, maybe we will be able to do those things.
I'm really excited about that. I was interested now, part of the reason we're coming up to a bicycle, or a cyclist I should say, and I know that this car has, I think it's 15 cameras around it, which are going to be interpreting the road, interpreting the cyclist. My question is, is that true that there's 15 cameras?
I think there's 8,
okay,
to my knowledge, yeah.
So in this book, Surveillance Capitalism, they talk about how with all this data that's going into cameras, facial recognition technology, this car is using software updates.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening to all that data as it absorbs the hundreds of millions of inputs that the Tesla is seeing around it? And what's the protection there to make sure that, for example, Tesla isn't selling our data like Facebook and Google does to advertisers? Yeah,
so that's a really, really good question. And yes, there's enormous amounts of data that is being generated by, there's over 1 million Teslas on the road now. Yeah. So just from Tesla alone, there's huge amounts of data that's going back to Tesla. Now, Tesla doesn't sell any of their data to advertising. Tesla's philosophically opposed to advertising, but that doesn't mean that other companies aren't, are as well philosophically opposed to advertising. So absolutely, there should be laws around data protection, and companies should only be using this data for its main purpose, which in this case, autonomous driving, is to improve the safety of these cars. Fortunately, Tesla's culture and their philosophy, that they're not going to use it in that way anyway. But definitely, we need laws to protect that more broadly.
Yeah, I think look, it's so important because imagine if, as facial recognition technology becomes more supreme, all of the inputs that the car's getting, if it's storing that, it's probably important to know where it's going. But something else I was interested in, there's kind of a criticism of Tesla around like the rare earth minerals, the use of the battery packs, and somebody was telling me that a Tesla can do like 1 million kilometers or something. How many batteries would be required to reuse, or like how many batteries would it take to get to 1 million kilometers?
Yeah, so one battery pack now will do 1 million, well, over 1 million kilometers. So there's a guy in Germany who he's now up to 1.4 million kilometers. He has a Tesla Model S from 2012, and he's been averaging 400 kilometers a day. Right, this is the old battery packs. This is Tesla's like original battery packs, and it's well over 1 million kilometers. Elon Musk is saying that the new battery packs that they're developing now, he's saying they'll do 1 million miles, which is 1.6 million kilometers. Right, so to put that into context, the average person does 35 to 40 kilometers per day driving. That's around 15,000 kilometers per year. So 1 million kilometers at 15,000 kilometers a year is 66 years worth of driving. Same battery pack.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's got to be much better for the planet, I would hope. But what are the options for, I guess, I often hear that we're getting these rare earth minerals from the Congo and things like that. Lithium is not, there's not an inexhaustible supply. Wasn't there something around how, what are they doing with the batteries when they are exhausted? Yeah,
so Tesla has developed their battery packs so that they're fully recyclable. So the new battery packs with Tesla are virtually 100% recyclable.
Okay.
Their new battery packs, they've removed cobalt completely.
Oh, right.
It's good to. I know there's a lot of concern around. Well, we're extracting oil, and now we're going to be extracting lithium. But there is an important point to make here. Coal, oil, and gas. We need to continuously extract them and burn them to provide energy. Whereas lithium is different. Lithium's actually a storer. Lithium batteries are a store of energy. Mm-hmm. You don't need to continuously burn lithium. So once we've extracted it, if we're able to recycle it and reuse it, we've got it for good. We've got that element for forever, really. So lithium, we extract it, we turn it into batteries, and then we use it to store energy from solar and wind power. So it's a fully circular, non-extractive economy that we could be going through. Yeah, and that's really the dream. And Tesla is really moving towards what they call non-extractive mining, which is a fancy word for recycling. Right. And it means that what they want to be able to do is extract all the elements, all the minerals that go into these vehicles from existing products, and even the foam in the seats that we're sitting on, that Tesla's taken out a patent to it's the first seat foam that is fully recyclable. So they'll be able to suck it out after your 66 years of driving. Correct. Suck out the foam and inject it into new seats.
Clean it first and then put it into the seats. It's very comfortable, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad we were talking about closed loops, because we're actually driving around Howden and Tinderbox now, and as we come around to the view, you'll be able to see potentially some of the salmon farms that are out there. One of the things that the Greens have been calling for is to try and get more closed loop systems, because it's this whole idea where I think the model of society so far has been very extractive. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the single use, it's the idea that we can just go to a place, colonize it, take what we need, and then when that's ruined, we can move on to the next.
Yeah.
And there's some of my concerns around the space race and going to Mars and things are in that mode where it's like, we're just going to use things once, and when the Earth doesn't work anymore, we'll just try and go to Mars. One of the things that's so important when we look at the salmon farms that are out here to my right is that we can no longer afford to be in that just extractive mindset. We actually have to make sure that our productivity and our economy is coming from things that are wholly sustainable, and that we can continue for generations and generations to come. And that's why there's so many lessons, I think, in learning from First Nations peoples, is because there were ways and modes of doing things where you could maintain it. Zero
waste.
60,000 years or more.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really, I think that's where the world is moving, and we are entering the third industrial revolution, which is defined by renewables, community-owned renewables and clean technology, and electric vehicles, and it'll be it'll be a circular economy. Why do we continuously dig stuff out of the ground and rip up our earth just to make a product and then chuck it out again?
Yeah. I think what's exciting to me about being in a Tesla today, and one of the reasons I was so keen to give it a go, is not just to set the land speed record, although we can do that later, but also to talk about the future of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Tesla is a nice emblem of that we actually don't need to have that city lifestyle where we're confined to a grid, and it's probably a good opportunity to mention that we've got Kylie Bell in the back.
Yes.
Kylie, my partner, is an amazing entrepreneur who runs Compass Hutton Wagon House. And do you want to explain, Kylie, what it is that you do?
Yeah, so Wagon House is a tiny house building company, which is the first business I started, and Compass Hut is the tiny house accommodation, which is our focus at the moment. And basically, so it's tiny house on wheels, and we've got 2 at the moment, which are entirely off-grid, and recently we've just installed a Tesla Powerwall, which the off-grid version has only been around, I think, a year or so. Very much focusing on sustainability, solar passive design, off-grid energy, and all that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. And so what's so important about that is, if you've got, for example, having a Tesla, or if you're in one of Kylie's off-grid tiny houses, you could actually be working at a high productivity level anywhere. You could be sitting on this cliffside looking at the beautiful view.
Yeah.
And you don't actually need to be tied to that 9 to 5 grind. And I think it's something that's so important is for us to start talking about the future of work, the 4-day work week. Like, I know that in Iceland they've trialed this to some great degree of success, and now something like 80% of people in Iceland are given the opportunity to work 4 days a week. I know there's been trials in New Zealand as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just about decoupling the idea of productivity being decoupled from being tied into a city full of smog and people travelling around when they don't really need to, creating carbon emissions.
Yep.
There's a whole new future to embrace, and I like that Tesla is kind of in that, it's playing in that space.
Yep.
But it's really important also that when we do that, we also decouple it from the capitalist mode. So
Yep.
it really isn't okay to have such massive economic inequality in the world. And I've been reading a lot of Richard Wolff's work, and Richard Wolff talks about democratizing the enterprise. So he's big on worker cooperatives and making sure that, if we have democracy in our politics, we should have democracy in the workplace as well.
Yep.
So I see a future, I hope we can get to a future, where we don't have to be tied to an office, where we can work flexibly and productively, but we also don't have to work in the same strict, regimented, industrialized timescale, and where we all get to have some say in the operations and the means of production and the way that we produce and what we produce, so that we can do it in an ethical way.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that is really the dream. And we've seen over the last 18 months with the disruption that the COVID pandemic has created, that it has challenged people's ideas of work, and so many people are now in flexible working conditions, working from home. Last year everyone learned how to use Zoom, right? So
some more than others.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I'm still on mute.
Yeah, so it's last year dramatically changed the world's ideas around work, and that's going to continue. But I think the big thing that ties what you're talking about with the third industrial revolution is decentralization of energy.
Yep.
And with the decentralization of energy comes decentralization of political power. And we can look at this on different levels, right? So you can look at Australia at the national level and say, well, if we can generate all of our electricity using renewables, and if our entire fleet was electric vehicles, well, we don't need to import oil anymore, right? But then look at the state level in Tasmania and say, well, Tassie's already producing 100% of its electricity from renewable sources. If Tassie goes 100% EVs, Tassie doesn't need to import any energy from the mainland, right? And then you can go even further and say, well, what if your own community can generate all of its own energy itself, and it's running on EVs? Then your community becomes energy independent. And with what Kylie's doing with tiny homes, at the house level, you're then energy independent.
It's pretty amazing. One of our projects was down here actually, and she had a hybrid off-grid system. And I remember driving back to Gideon's, and there was a big power outage, but then hers was, all the lights were on. So it was
the one place out of everywhere.
The most amazing thing about what we do with the accommodation, further to that, is that we're not dependent on anything.
Yeah.
Really. So it lives and breathes. It's creating its own energy, and then being used. It's just amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened. I think it was in Texas a few, maybe 6 months ago or something. They had a big freeze there, and it knocked out a whole bunch of power stations. But all the people that had like home battery systems, they were still okay.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't know. You have no idea.
Yeah.
You could just be going along, and nothing changes. So.
Now, for me, one of the most critical factors of decentralisation is not just the individual advantages that we will get by having power on when everybody else's power is off. It's actually the opposite. It's the collective importance of that, of breaking the backs of the power centres that are currently stopping us from having nice things.
100%.
So a critical example of that would be the fact that this Tesla has taken so long to get here is because the fossil fuel industry and legacy automakers refused to let electric vehicle technology into the mainstream.
Absolutely.
And they did that by crippling the politics of all of the secular democracies that we have across the world. As long as they're still taking political donations from big corporations, we don't have a true democracy. And so the more that we can decentralise things like the energy system or whatever it might be, the more that we can take the power out of the hands of big business and the people with all the money.
Absolutely.
But to get there, I think we actually need some legislative reform to make sure that big corporations, whether it's ExxonMobil or whether it's Elon Musk, they shouldn't be donating to our politicians, and we have to get money out of politics.
Absolutely. And the oil industries has for decades tried to suppress the uptake of electric vehicles, and it's really insidious in the ways that it does that. They're paying a lot of people to come up with creative ways of like stopping the electric vehicle revolution. The oil industry generates over $2 trillion US per year. It's something like 3 or 4 billion US per day. So every day that the oil industry can delay the uptake of electric vehicles is worth like 3 or 4 billion US. So that's a lot of money to throw into PR firms to put out negative stories about electric vehicles and start fear campaigns, etc. But even other ways they've done it, like Tesla has come under massive attack from the oil industry and legacy auto. Tesla's the fastest growing car company in history. And at the same time, last year, it was the most shorted stock in history.
Really?
Yeah, so 30% of the stock was shorted. And people are like, well, why are people shorting this company when it's the fastest growing car company in history? And it turns out that it's the oil industry shorting the stock. They'd put $10 billion into shorting it just to create negative stories, negative media. And that $10 billion, even if they lost it, it would have paid itself off within 2 weeks for the oil industry, right?
Right. Well, so if it is, 3 or 4 billion, whatever it might be per day, the shocking thing to me is actually how cheap our politicians come. So the major parties here in Australia are taking hundreds of millions of dollars. But if you think it's $3 billion per day that the oil industry is getting, no wonder we haven't seen a phase out of coal and oil. No wonder we haven't seen an end to native forest logging, because the price that you can pay to donate to a major party politician, it's paltry. It's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
for a lot of these big corporations.
It's such a good return on investment, right?
Yes.
And you look at like the mining tax that got shut down a decade ago. Apparently, like, you know, Gina Rinehart and Twiggy Forrest, they threw a few $1 million, you know, a couple of million into a negative ad campaign, and you know they've probably donated millions to the Liberal Party, the National Party as well. Now it's been they, you know, got rid of Rudd's mining tax, and it's been estimated that mining tax could have generated $30 or $40 billion over the last 10 years. Now they've paid a pittance for that. Now what an amazing return on investment for them.
Yeah.
At the expense of the Australian public.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's probably an important juncture to mention that one of the main reasons why we need to be taxing the billionaires, one of the main reasons why we need a ban on corporate political donations, is not necessarily to fund the services that the government provides, but it is critically to change the power dynamic that currently exists.
Yep.
Where big businesses have the power, they essentially, through a system of legalised bribery, corrupt our democratic process, and then they get their way rather than the way of the people. But in terms of funding the public services and the spending that we need, the modern monetary theory is something that I've been reading a lot into, and I've done a little YouTube series called My 2 Cents Adjusted for Inflation about just this, about how we could, if we were to embrace the power of the public purse, we could be building roads, schools, hospitals, giving grants to people to have great public transport and electric vehicles, and it wouldn't need to be tied. Oh, so this is for that cyclist.
Yep, that's all good.
It wouldn't need to be tied to that taxes fund spending model.
Myth. Yeah.
If you listen to Stephanie Kelton or Bill Mitchell or any of the Stephen Hale, any of the modern monetary theory proponents, Warren Mosler and the rest. But that's not to say that we don't need taxes. You absolutely need taxes, not just to drive currency and prevent inflation and Bogovian taxes, sin taxes, you know, stop people doing behaviours that aren't useful, whether it's you know, tobacco or alcohol or gambling. But critically important is we currently have a power dynamic that exists in our mode of, you know, late stage capitalism, where big business is running the show and they're telling us how we should organise our societies, and we now have millions of children in Australia who are living through poverty when that's really just a political choice.
Absolutely.
And we need to end that. We need to make sure that everybody, irrespective of their postcode, has access to housing as a human right, really good healthcare, excellent education, world-class education, and these are things that we can provide. We have the smarts and the real resources and the technology here in Australia to provide them, but we just need political will to achieve that. And a big part of that is making sure that the major parties stop taking those corporate political donations.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up modern monetary theory, because I'm a big fan of MMT as well.
Oh, good, it's nice. Kindred spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually met Stephanie Kelton.
Oh, wow.
And I've read her book, which is called The Deficit Myth. And Stephanie Kelton was actually the chief economic advisor to Bernie Sanders just over a year ago.
Yeah.
And I believe that MMT is critical to the transition, the transition that we need to make, because the MMT really busts a lot of these myths that the government only has, you know, a certain amount of money that it can play with. We know last year with COVID, when the government needed to provide support to people in the form of JobKeeper, all of a sudden, you know, $300 billion was available, and it just dropped it like that. Bang.
That's right. And nobody asks with the submarines, how are you going to pay for it? $90 billion.
Yeah.
You know, the same size as it's larger than our education sector.
Yeah.
The money is always available. It's just the constraint is about inflation. But we should be concerned about, you know, making sure that inflation doesn't get out of hand. But we should be spending money for the public purpose. It's public money, and it should be spent on the public purpose.
And the reason it's not, like, if the federal government wanted to, tomorrow, it could drop $500 billion into renewables and electric vehicle policy, right? If it wanted to. The reason it doesn't is because the faster that renewables and electric vehicles grow, the faster the coal, oil and gas industry will die.
Yeah.
That's what's at the core of this. They are protecting these 19th century industries, and we all pay the price. We pay the price with a bleak future with climate, but we also pay the price with our health, because we're breathing in diesel particulate and carbon monoxide every day. And you're right, poverty is it's a political choice. We have the capacity to look after everyone. And another key component of MMT, a lot of MMT advocates, their thinking is a federal job guarantee.
So important.
Yeah, and we, I know I'm from Central Queensland. A lot of my old school friends work in the coal industry, really care about fossil fuel industry workers, and we need to provide a bridge for them into the new economy that's coming.
A just transition. Here in Kingborough, there's 500 young people not in education, employment and training. And when I was growing up at Sandfly, Allen's Rivulet at Sandfly, there's not that many jobs available in the local community to do things for the greater public purpose. But in fact, there's things to be done, working with the fireys, regenerating damaged environmental projects. There's all kinds of things that are available to be done. But it's like, people have been so constrained in their thinking about where's the money going to come from, that we have to think that until, currently there's this idea that unless Gina Reinhardt gives us the money, we can't achieve it.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly.
There's 500 young people in Kingborough who have talent, who have skills, who would love to reach their full potential by getting more skills and being able to use that for the public purpose, but we're just not funding it. So we need to start funding it.
Yeah.
And a federal jobs guarantee would do just that.
Absolutely. And I'm a big advocate for a federal job guarantee for the mentions that for the reasons that you mentioned. The ultimate federal job guarantee, in my opinion, is federally funding these jobs, but implementing and managing them at the local council level. So every council, every local community is different in Australia and has different requirements. So if councils can create their own jobs depending on their own situation, that's fantastic, and it puts more political power back into local regions. And the other big thing that it does, we have like a 5% unemployment rate. Now that could be down to 1% with a federal job guarantee. Now,
just frictional unemployment as people change between jobs to find the job that suits them. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, for example, if you worked at an abattoir, right, and you've got really low pay and you've got really shitty conditions, at the moment, if you're looking at New Start at like $278 a week, that's a horrible prospect for you. So you're going to keep your mouth shut. You're going to keep working in this job for shitty conditions and shitty pay. You're not going to ask your boss for a raise or to improve conditions. Yeah. But if there's a federal job guarantee that you can go to, it might be paid less than your current job, but it's still there, and it's a secure job, and it's enough to cover the basics, food and accommodation, and it's not below the poverty line like New Start is, right? So having that as an option would then give people in that situation more courage to ask their employee for better conditions or better pay, which would improve the conditions across the rest of the economy.
That's right. So currently, big businesses particularly are using the threat of unemployment to discipline workers' wage demands.
Exactly.
So, look at Domino's Pizza is a good example, where the CEO makes $30 million a year, and meanwhile the workers are basically on minimum wage, and I think they've got to pay for their own fuel and uniforms and stuff like that. If there were a federally funded, locally administered jobs guarantee that set the minimum benchmark for what a minimum wage job looks like in terms of wages, conditions, sick leave, benefits, all of a sudden that job at Domino's, you don't have to do it, because you could actually go and do, work for the fireys at Sandfly, or you could go and do coastal remediation projects, at the beach, or there'd be so many other options.
Oh, you could, the options are limitless. Like, you could create, a local community might want to create jobs for people to check in on elderly people.
Exactly right.
You're only limited by your imagination, really.
You're absolutely right. And there's the possibilities are endless. And until they can automate, at the end of somebody's life for a robot to hold somebody's hand with the same comfort that a human can, then there are always jobs for people to be doing in the caring economy.
Yep.
Caring for each other, caring for community, caring for country.
Yep.
And these should be the kind of jobs, and they're low carbon jobs, nursing and teaching and helping people at the footy. these are low carbon jobs.
Yeah,
and
empathy jobs almost.
empathy jobs.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I also like this. Whoa.
Oh yeah. Now I can see, like, we've been having a really good conversation, but I can see in your eyes that you really want to like plant it.
How can you tell?
Yeah. So I'm wondering if we can find a spot, probably maybe not around here, but I mean, you're welcome to give it a squirt now to up to 90 when we get onto a straight bit. Or yeah.
Okay. I like how smooth the car is as well. You can really it's a very nice, soft to the touch, very sensitive, but it has this feeling of control.
Stability.
Yeah.
Yeah, a large part of that, I'll just show you this. This is your battery pack here.
Okay.
And so all the weight is down really low. And so you feel as we're coming around this corner, there's no roll in the car.
Yeah.
Like, it's really flat.
Yeah, it's great.
And that means it's got so much more grip. It's like stuck to the road so much more than a normal car, because a normal car, the center of gravity is up much higher.
So is it heavier than a car of a similar size?
It
like
is.
An ICE car?
Yeah. So this car's 1.8 tons, and the weight is one thing, but really the thing that gives this car incredible vehicle dynamics is the center of gravity.
Okay.
The fact that it's down below our feet. With a normal car, internal combustion engine car, the engine is up higher and it's right in the front.
Okay.
And so that's really bad vehicle dynamics.
And so is the engine is underneath this kind of thing?
So this car has two motors. There's two electric motors. One's in the front and one's in the back. And electric motors are a lot smaller than internal combustion engine vehicle motors as well. Yeah, how does it feel?
I might be convinced.
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
How soon until, I'm already convinced that the legacy automotive industry actually, because it's been promoting fossil fuels for so long, I think that there's almost some kind of reparations that they should pay for the amount of pollution they put into the atmosphere, the damage to our health, and of course perpetuating that really insidious cycle where big business runs politics.
Yeah.
But are there competitors should we expect that a new Tesla kind of company is right around the corner in terms of that competitive dynamic?
That is a really, really good question. And yeah, I get asked this a lot now, because obviously I talk about Tesla a lot and I don't talk about other car manufacturers. And there are good reasons why I'm so focused on Tesla. One of the main reasons is because Tesla is a 100% electric vehicle company. They started as an electric vehicle company. They specialize in building electric vehicles. Whereas a lot of legacy auto companies, they're building this 19th century technology, and now they're trying to make electric vehicles and somehow make the switch over, and they're just failing miserably.
Yeah.
These car companies like Volkswagen, GM, Ford, they have been producing polluting, destructive vehicles for decades, and they've been resisting the change to EVs. And investors who invest in legacy auto, a lot of them, they want profits in the next quarter. So these companies end up putting all their money into marketing and advertising and manipulating people into buying their existing products, rather than developing production capacity to produce electric vehicles, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's one of the reasons. I still think that legacy auto still isn't serious about EVs. Point to all the Ford EVs on the road. They're always saying, "Oh, we've got EVs coming." They always seem to be 2 years away.
Yep.
Even 5-6 years ago,
Yeah.
they've been saying they're going to be 2 years away for 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all marketing spin, in my opinion. The other thing, Tesla doesn't spend a cent on advertising, and they're the fastest growing car company in history. And that is because they have created an incredible product that people want and people rave about. You get nutcases like me driving around the country just talking about Tesla all the time.
Right.
Legacy auto, they manipulate people into buying these cars that are really bad for us all as a society.
Well, so I am cognizant that we're coming up to the 100 limit, and when we do that, is it possible, depending on if there's nobody behind me and I can do it in a very safe, methodical,
Yep.
preordained way, is it okay if I kind of slow down a bit and that way we can really...
Yeah, absolutely. If there's no one coming, you can come to a full stop,
Okay.
and we can do the traditional 0 to 100.
Okay. Kylie, do you have you got your helmet on, Kylie? How are you feeling back
I'm
there?
holding onto my stomach.
You've got your bucket. Okay. And I just wondered, was there anything else that I meant to talk about, KB?
Charging stations.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you reminded me, Kylie, about charging stations. So here in Kingborough, I'm pretty sure we've got one at the Civic Centre, and I would like the state government to be leaning in and providing... what I might do is I might just pull over
Yep.
here, if that's all right.
Yeah, no worries.
So, I'll let that guy go past.
Yeah.
So, charging stations.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask you briefly about, is one enough? Like, we've got 336 kilometres of coastline. We've got an area all the way down to, Woodbridge and Flowerpot. And then there's just one little charging station in Kingston. Is that enough, or shouldn't we be rolling out a charging network all across the state and all across Kingborough?
Yeah. So that's another really good question. There's a couple of points. So first of all, yes, we do need to roll out charging stations across Australia and across Tasmania. We need fast charging stations everywhere. Mm-hmm. But one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have is that they need to go to these charging stations to charge their electric vehicles like you would at a petrol station. So a lot of people think that we need the same number of charging stations as we have petrol stations.
Yeah.
This actually isn't true, because if you have a garage and you have electricity in your garage, which the vast majority of people have, you actually have a fuel station in your garage if you've got an electric vehicle.
Okay.
So the vast majority of people will charge their electric vehicles at home when they're asleep overnight. And so everyone with an EV basically can start the day with a full charge.
Okay.
So you only really need the fast charging stations for doing intercity travel, or people who live in apartments who don't have access to a garage.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a relief. And I guess a little advocacy point that I'd like to raise is I would like there to be no rego on EVs, so that people kind of get a registration exemption, and that would incentivise the changeover. Are you worried or concerned? Is there a risk that they'll bring in electric vehicle owner road user taxes and fees in the future? Is that something that you're concerned about?
Yeah, so they've done that in Victoria. They've introduced a road user tax which only applies to EV owners, right?
Okay.
And the justification for this is that it's needed for road revenue, but in actual fact, the road maintenance revenue comes out of general revenue, and it has done for a very long time. And so this has been used, again, I feel, to slow down the EV uptake. And Victoria is now the only government in the world to actually tax electric vehicles.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just absurd. And we've just been talking about modern monetary theory. So you know as well as I do that the government has plenty of money to keep roads maintained.
Yeah.
We don't need to be taxing electric vehicles in their infancy.
That's right. Because it will just disincentivise people from actually from getting involved.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just giving your Tesla a little off-road test here.
Yeah, that's all right.
So there's this bit of a myth going around, I think, that if you're in a Tesla, you can't drive on dirt roads. Is that true?
Oh, that is a biggest load of BS ever. Okay. I've taken this car off-road many times now, and it's a dream, absolute dream.
Okay, so we're now in it's a 100 limit. And so let's give it a go. Are you happy for everybody's holding on?
Yep. So just come out onto the road,
okay,
if you can.
And 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's great.
Nice.
It really works, everyone.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Okay, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So just try again now. Go to 90. Just hit it now.
It's like being in the future.
Yeah. And you feel totally in control, huh?
100% in control.
Yeah.
I feel like we could take it to 200. We won't.
Yeah.
That's okay. I believe it.
It's like
Did you like
a
that?
spaceship,
Yeah.
Like a rocket or a spaceship. Wow.
Yeah, so this one does 0 to 100 in 3.3 seconds. The new Tesla Model S Plaid does 0 to 100 in 1.9 seconds.
Yeah, wow.
So to make this thing seem like a golf buggy.
Can you confirm that I went faster than David Foster?
You held on to it longer than he did,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Don't test my wood chopping ability. Not cut.
He can cut through a large piece of wood in like 12 chops.
Okay,
so he's got you there.
He's got me there. Yep.
But you did accelerate a lot longer than he did. So shout out to David if you're watching.
Thanks. Sorry, David. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think like people, a lot of people watch the channel and they see the reactions and they go, "Oh wow, that's cool," but you don't actually get it until you're in the driver's seat.
You kind of, you really feel it viscerally. You feel it in your bones, and you feel it. I'm concerned about what my face was looking like when I did that, but
and also the fact that you're in total control of it as well.
Well,
like
right.
It's like being in control of your own roller coaster.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. Drive safely, everyone.
Yeah, drive safely. But it's also the smooth, like the gear, the no gear change as well. So you're going 0 to 100 with no jolts, no gear change. So it's a smooth acceleration all the way up.
Yeah, no, it is good. Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a bit lost for words now, actually, because it's still with me.
Yeah, we often do that at the start to get people a bit fired up for the conversation. But there was a couple of things I wanted to ask you about.
Yes.
So you recently part of a very interesting proposal to help protect trees on private land in Kingborough. So I'd love to hear about that, if you don't mind.
Well, basically, Kingborough is very lucky in that we have this enormous constituency of people who care deeply about their environment. They care about clean air. They know intrinsically the benefits of having trees, which is that it helps your health and well-being. It helps clean our air. It's probably one of the best dust busters that you can get, if not the only natural dust buster for getting particulate matter out of the air. And so Kingborough is very lucky that we've had a bylaw that has made stipulations around trees on private property to say that it basically that you need a permit if you're going to attempt to lop or ring bark or take down either trees that are on the significant tree register or trees that are over 80 centimetres of diameter at chest height. So basically what we call significant trees, trees of high conservation value. And there was basically a ministerial direction that came in February called IPD4. And the theory among a set of lawyers was that new IPD4 meant that Kingborough's tree protection bylaw was inconsistent or incongruous with the planning scheme. Now, of course, I didn't believe that. We got advice from the Environmental Defenders Office. They didn't believe that. And we mounted a campaign where we got local community groups. We asked them, we basically let them know about this technical...
Should we keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Where we, by letting the community know about what was going on, obviously everybody was incensed because this is a little technicality, a bit of jargon, legalese that nobody really understood. But when they were alerted to the fact that what this meant was that Kingborough was about to scrap the tree bylaw that protected all these trees around us, there was a great outcry. And I'm pleased to report 184 people wrote in submissions to the council, which is by far the largest number of submissions for that type of public consultation.
Yeah.
And as a compromise, the council was willing, and I'm very grateful to this, for them to have gone to a senior counsel, basically one of the highest lawyers in the state, to ask them to basically arbitrate on this decision, whether or not the bylaw was incongruous with the planning scheme.
Yeah,
and they came back on our side, and sure enough, Kingborough will now be re-implementing a tree bylaw.
That's fantastic, Gideon.
Wonderful.
Congratulations on that. And I guess it also means that a whole bunch of new people have started engaging more in local politics.
Well, that's right. It's a huge...
Go for it.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. What a good feeling.
Yeah, I thought we'd come down here so then you can get a feel of the freeway driving, and also we'll finish what we're talking about, but we'll try the autonomous driving as well.
Oh, good.
For you as well. Yeah.
Well, just to finish that thought about the trees in Kingborough, what it shows to me is that people do care about their community, and they care about country, and they care about having clean air and clean water and a clean life. And the way that we can achieve that clean, green future is by embracing technology, but also keeping a mind to social justice and to reducing inequality. And I'm really pleased to I guess, be a case in point where by simply explaining the reason why trees are important to the community and letting people know about what's at stake, there's this overwhelming outpouring because people actually do care. And I think for a long time we've just assumed that there's not a great degree of political literacy or there's not that appetite, because we're constantly told, particularly on mainstream media, like if you're watching, I won't call Sky News mainstream, but if you're watching Sky News, you get this sense that people don't care about the environment and people care about money and the economy, and that we should all be working for the economy as though it's some great deity. But actually, the more I talk to people around Kingborough, the more I realise that people are on the same page when it's like, we want the economy to be working for us. It's an invention that we have crafted, and at the moment it's serving vested interests and fossil fuel companies and legacy auto. But actually, it should be serving us and our lifestyle and our way of life, and it should be protecting the things that matter most.
Absolutely. And, you know, the economy is what we want it to be. The economy is what we make it. We can make it serve us instead of us serving it. And yeah, I want to talk more about local government, local council, because often local council gets kind of forgotten about, and when people are focusing on at the federal level more. But there's so many opportunities at the local level to actually do the things that make the change that we want to make. And like just one of them is like local councils that encourage this decentralization of energy, or encourage community-owned renewables and electric vehicles. They're actually taking power away from the fossil fuel industry and therefore the federal government. So they're kind of undercutting that. So I think local government's a lot more powerful than people realise. Yeah,
more powerful than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
And the chief advantage is that local government is really the closest form of the interface between the community and politics, right?
It's where the rubber hits the road,
so to speak. Yeah, that's right. And really, there's that idea that, what is it? Protest, politics, and the market, right? So by starting in the community and having community conversations and letting people know about the issues that are important, and let's just use climate as the example in this case, that can start by people raising their voices and signing petitions, and more often than not, you can get into the office of your local councillor, you can have a chat to them on the phone, they're there at the bus stop with you, or they're there at the school pickup with you. So you can really start that conversation at local government level in a really clear way, whereas sometimes I feel like at state and federal levels, people are hidden away behind staff, behind office doors and things like that.
Not accessible.
Yeah. So you've got your protest. What is this beeping mean? It's the
no, it's all good. It's the camera. It's just overheating, but I need to turn it on again soon.
So you've got your, what I'll call that element of protest, which is really can start with just community conversation. And then you enter into politics where you start talking at local government level. I strongly recommend people run as candidates. And you can make that legislative change. And that's why I'd like to see, an end to EV rego. Like, you shouldn't have to pay rego. We should have governments providing a lot more incentives for people to make their house, environmentally efficient, like thermally efficient. Kylie can talk a lot about this with her background studying Bachelor of Architecture. And then there's the market, actually what we've done in Kingborough just last week, which is really huge, and thanks to a lot of lobbying, I would say predominantly by Greens politicians around the place, is that we've now divested from fossil fuels.
Wow.
That's an example of where politics meets the market, right? Where we've legislated, or in this case, it's just now in our investment policy that we're not going to be investing in banks that are using fossil fuels and things like that. So these are just the kind of incremental steps that we can take. But I really strongly recommend that people get involved and start talking to their local councillors particularly, but also at every level of government. I'm particularly interested in making sure that we've got a net zero emissions council. Like Kingborough Council has declared a climate emergency, but we haven't yet set our leadership target to be net zero emissions by 2035.
Right.
That's what I'm campaigning for at the moment. We've got a 2050 target, but really, if you look at the IPCC report, this is a code red for humanity. Like, we don't have time to be, taking these really
29-year target.
Exactly.
This is absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd. So, net zero emissions council would be really important. And I forget what your original question was around.
Just the impacts that local government can have, even at a broader level. So you might be implementing things at local level, but if you can help your local community get off fossil fuels, then you're actually taking power away from large fossil fuel companies and therefore their ability to lobby our federal government.
Yeah.
So you're kind of it's a grassroots, like you're undercutting this power, but at a local level.
This is why groups like Extinction Rebellion, I think, are quite important, and that idea of like mutual aid and really localized systems, even in terms of things like food security. By localizing our systems, we're right now, probably for the last 40 or 50 years really, since the Powell doctrine, there's been this onslaught of neoliberalism where it's become the norm, and it's almost like no matter what side of politics, there's still like neoliberal ideas that have really almost like infected the way that we think about society.
Yeah.
Remember when Margaret Thatcher said there is no such thing as a society, there's just like people paying bills and paying each other.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we are in a society, and if you look at particularly First Nations culture, the way that that's worked is the way that it's been sustainable for 60,000 years is through caring for each other and not being subservient to the vested power blocks that we currently have. So I think you are right that by decentralizing a lot of our ways of life, whether that's no longer working in the city and instead working remotely or working in community, or whether it's any number of things like the energy grid and municipal broadband, municipal banking, these are things that I'm really interested in as well, and of course worker co-ops.
Yeah.
These are ways of taking power away from the oligarchs, the billionaires, Jeff Bezos, soon to be a trillionaire apparently, divesting power away from those vested interests and giving it back to the people.
Absolutely.
That's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And again, it just comes back to decentralization and the technology, the thing that Tesla does, it creates technology that allows for decentralization.
Yeah, but I don't want my take to be misinterpreted as an individualistic lifestyle.
Right.
So when I say that we should be able to work remotely, or I'm not saying that we should disengage. I think our most powerful mechanism for becoming adaptable and resilient in the face of climate breakdown, which is what we're all kind of working through together at this moment, is to care for each other and invest in each other. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is we need to, I guess, decentralize from the power structure that says that money is more important than people, a dollar is more important than a vote, and big business has more of a say than community. I think that's the mode that we need to break apart.
Yep.
And I'll be pleased to be a part of any kind of movement towards that brighter future.
And your ideas are resonating in Kingborough. I heard that the vote has actually increased dramatically.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's really thanks to community groups talking to each other. But essentially I was elected on a recount, so I've only been on the council for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. So when one councillor resigned, I stepped up. So initially when I first ran for council, I didn't get that many votes. And I remember talking to Bob Brown about this and feeling a bit despondent. And Bob reminded me that in his first election, I think he got like 117 votes.
Yeah, wow.
So, but recently there was a Kingbrough by-election. The then mayor of Kingbrough got into the state parliament, so they held a by-election, and I ran for mayor in that by-election, and I got the second highest number of first preference votes. We've got the Greens vote up to 26% in Kingbrough.
That's awesome.
So that means 1 in 4 people in Kingbrough is now voting Green, and onwards and upwards. I mean, the German election is today, and I'll be really interested to see, but there's talk about the Greens sharing power in government in what is the number 1 economy in Europe, and really such a powerful mover and shaker when it comes to climate action and privacy regulations, kind of looping back to what we talked about at the beginning, data and things like that, and also dealing with the showing compassion with refugee crises and things like that. Germany is such an important player in the world stage, and I feel like as we're entering into a time of geopolitical tensions, you really need Greens in power now more than ever.
Absolutely. And we saw that actually we might turn around here if you want.
Yeah, sure thing. Maybe up here.
Yeah, anyway, it's good.
Maybe I'll turn right.
Yep. Yeah, we saw this also in the Victorian council elections last year. I think that they had something like a 60% increase in Greens councillors in Victoria during the Victorian council elections last year. Did you hear about that?
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic news.
It went from there was 21 Greens councillors in Victoria to 36 or something crazy like that. Huge increase.
Well, look, we're at a time where the climate breakdown particularly is becoming more and more apparent to everyone. I mean, we're entering into yet another... it's beautiful with the snow on the mountain there.
Yeah.
We're entering into the bushfire season yet again.
Go for it.
But this is... Oh, yeah, I could get used to this. Really works.
Yeah.
90%, more than 90% of Kingborough is bushfire prone.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're hearing from all the fireys is that actually the intensity of the bushfire, the severity of it, and the frequency of it is all on the increase. So this is a lived experience now for all of my constituency in Kingborough, and for me personally, the Gel River fires just the other year, the Huon bushfires, there's still paint chips out of my car from where the ash was falling from that. I was in Canberra in 2003 when the bushfires ravaged Canberra. This is the lived experience for Australians now, and more we can see that if we just do business as usual, where the fossil fuel mates of the major parties pay the piper of, and give some political contributions to Labor and Liberal, we'll just get the same outcomes again and again. But for so many people living in my neighbourhood, the time for action was actually yesterday, and now it's about adapting and knowing each other on the street, so that when the calamity does happen, we're ready to give each other a call, or when the power's out, we know each other to knock on the door and check on everybody. We know to evacuate early. We know to have our bushfire plans in place. These are the lived experiences of Australians now. So no wonder the Greens vote will inevitably go up and up as people realise that this is an existential threat that we're facing, and we actually need politicians who are willing to engage on that level.
Absolutely. Well, very well said. And it is inevitable that that the vote, not only for Greens but progressives or even independents who want strong action on climate, it's inevitable that that vote is going to increase. And communities, one of the things that gives me hope about the future is that when communities are put under stress and under adverse conditions, they strengthen. And like you're saying with the fires, people are already coming together to prepare to become more resilient. So you put external stresses on a community and it will strengthen. And that's what's going to happen with the climate crisis more broadly around the world. As we see more and more of these extreme weather events, fires, floods, droughts, communities will start to pull together. They will start to communicate. Word of mouth will increase, and this garbage that we get fed from media organisations like Sky News will be exposed as complete and utter lies that it has been for decades. And it is inevitable that we are going to see a change in politics, not just here but around the world.
It couldn't come soon enough, and I'll just give a little plug for the Conningham and Lower Snug Community Association and the work that they've done on bushfire preparedness. They're giving out bushfire emergency preparation kits. Mm-hmm. So it's things like having a battery-powered radio and having a flashlight and knowing all your neighbours and making sure that neighbours know to check on each other in case of emergency. And this goes back to that idea of mutual aid and caring for each other at a local level. Mm-hmm. But of course, what that also is, I think, a testament to is the fact that the government, for a long time, governments of both political persuasions, have actually taken a back seat. And they should never have done that. They should always have been thinking about community first and making sure that local governments are prepared and have the resources that they need, that local communities have full employment and that nobody's being left behind, that there's no poverty in communities, that people have access to good nutritious food and that we don't have food deserts and things like that. So really I feel like we're now picking up the pieces for 40 years of bad policy.
Absolutely.
And really fixing now all of the errors of neoliberalism. The proof is in the pudding that I'm 32 years old and I've lived through the two of the worst global financial crises for 100 years. If capitalism was supposed to be so good, why is it that we kind of go through this economic shock every 4 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And why weren't we prepared with quarantine facilities, with emergency vaccination hubs? Why didn't we, have our own manufacturing capability for masks and, PPE and whatever else it is? Why don't we have enough firefighting equipment and resourcing here in Tasmania? Why aren't we prepared in this kind of way? And I think the reason is that there wasn't profit in it.
Exactly. All decisions that have been made for many years now at the federal government level have been about profits for mates, really. And it's such a disgrace, really, that we're facing such massive challenges, and our leadership is really only concerned with the profits of a handful of people. But this, as we're saying, local government, local communities can become more resilient. A couple of weeks ago, I had Hannah Maloney in the driver's seat, and she is all about creating resilient communities through production of food, and that's also like a decentralization as well.
And there's reason to be optimistic. I think that now that there's people like you and me and Hannah and all those other people who are out there demystifying this stuff and making it more accessible. Now that there's people talking about permaculture, talking about food deserts, talking about how we do these fixes. I think there's reason to be optimistic. It's just the matter of urgency that we need to keep reiterating. And the sooner that we can, I guess, infiltrate politics to the extent that it's no longer being corrupted by big business, the faster we'll see those changes.
Absolutely,
but we've got a ways to go. But as long as we're optimistic and we keep fighting, we'll get there.
Exactly. Now, I was thinking this might be a good opportunity for you to try the autonomous driving.
Yes, I would love to.
Because we're heading back to your place now. So it's a bit windy here, so it might be a bit intimidating. But we'll just wait till we get on a bit of a straight. What'll happen, you'll double tap down on the right hand paddle and two blue lines will come up here. Then you're in auto. Just be really gentle with the wheel when it's in auto, because if you apply slight pressure, it'll pull it out.
Okay, so you ready to do it?
Yep.
Two down.
Okay, so let go. Yep, this is fine. This is bread and butter for it. It's locked onto the lines.
Beautiful.
Now every now and then it's gonna ask you just to touch the steering wheel slightly. It's fine now, but it'll pop up around here, and when it does, it's you'll just need to turn it slightly.
This is amazing.
How's that feel?
How does it feel for you, Kylie?
Scary.
Do you trust me? It's going pretty well so far, isn't it?
Yeah, so I drove 90% of the way. So yeah, apply slight turning force, just a little bit, like that. That's all you need. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, I drove 90% of the way in this mode from Melbourne to Central Queensland, no problems whatsoever. So it is super reliable. It's the cameras are seeing the lines, and if there's a problem, it'll beep at you and tell you to take over at any time.
So I can get in the back seat, make a sandwich, take a nap.
I wouldn't recommend that just yet. Maybe in a few years when this technology is like 1,000 times better than humans, which it inevitably will be.
Well, maybe. Certainly better than me.
Yeah.
That is cool.
And see, it's picked up the car. So your max speed is 80, but it's at 68 because it's matching the speed of the car in front of you.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And this is quite a winding road as well.
Yeah, really winding. It's pretty impressive that it can achieve it.
Just touch a little bit. Okay. There we go. That's good.
Wow, that's great. I mean, it takes all the effort out of driving, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think people will still want to have their hands on the wheel? Like, people will still want that feeling of driving because it's fun? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I use this mode all the time, but I keep my hands on the wheel.
Which I should probably do.
It's up to you. But the thing is, when humans are driving, we're making like thousands of little calculations constantly, and it's very draining. Yeah. So your mind is constantly taking this corner and adjusting and making all these calculations. This does it all for you, so you actually arrive to wherever you're going. You arrive much more rested because you haven't had to focus so intensely the whole time.
How long did it take you to get used to the autopilot function?
Not long. I mean, I've watched thousands of hours of YouTubes.
Okay.
So I was going into it, I was already quite comfortable, but maybe like a couple days and I was pretty comfortable with it. And now I've driven thousands of kilometers in this mode, so I'm super confident.
I don't think Kylie trusts my driving at the best of times, so this is probably
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, this is where we're going, right? And with the software updates that you get with Tesla, this car will just continue. It's better now than what it was 18 months ago. To take it out, you can bump the pedal up, so now you can drive it.
Because it won't know where I live yet, will it? Hopefully.
Not yet, but if we had the full self-driving package, you actually punch the address in, and then it would drive us there automatically.
Yeah, right.
And that is a thing that is happening right now.
Yes. Okay. Tesla knows everything it needs to know about me,
Yeah.
and I'm not yet okay with that.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
They are the good guys
Yeah.
at this stage.
Okay. So we're just passing by now the beautiful Northwest Bay River. This is Kingborough's largest river system here. So we're just ducking down by Sandfire.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so many really incredible, the biodiversity of this region is so impressive, and the natural and cultural values are amazing. So it's a real privilege to live in such a beautiful part of the world. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm so interested in climate action and so interested in not just preserving what we have, but rewilding and creating a vision for a future that is sustainable, and I mean in the long run, not just sustainable for the next election cycle, but sustainable for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
That's what we should all be reaching for, I think.
Absolutely, and I've heard that New Zealand now has a 1,000-year rewilding plan, which is being driven by the Maori Party over there. And like, what a vision! What an incredible thing to be a part of, to be helping to rewild this beautiful country that we've got, and create hope for the future, create a better future. Because the big problem that we've got now, our young people are so anxious and depressed because everything is getting worse.
Yeah.
Not only is it getting worse, but we're watching our leaders do nothing to stop it. So I think there will be a tipping point when we do start to get serious about action on climate and get serious about repairing some of the damage that we've got, and that will create so much hope for everyone, and that will be a complete game changer, I think. Recently,
We've kind of been oscillating from climate disaster to climate disaster. You mentioned Texas and the big freeze, and then we're seeing that the US is in drought at the moment. We've had floods and fires, and it's really incumbent on all of us, I think, to make sure that we are seeing the big picture around this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's important to have those kind of longer term plans, because otherwise we're just going to end up just repairing from one thing to another, but not taking in the big picture about what's really at stake.
Yep.
I think that it does come down to politics, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I used to spend a lot of time either yelling at the TV or complaining to my mum, and at one point she finally said, well, actually go and do something about it, and
Yep.
That was the main impetus for me to run for local council. And it's a small piece of a much bigger puzzle, and it's a small bit that I'm doing, but what keeps me energized is the 1,000 people that are around me that are thinking in the same way and trying to build this movement together. And it does cross a whole range of creeds and beliefs and backgrounds, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a great diversity in that movement, but I feel like we are all coming together.
Yep.
And that's so important that we find allies as we move forward, because you'll notice that even when vested interest in big business, even when they're completely different businesses, or even if they have quite different ideologies, they all work together for the power of money, right?
Yeah,
they
that's
all work
right.
together for profit, and they're willing to compromise on a lot of niggly-naggly little
Yep.
things, as long as they can maintain their thumb
Like the
on
business council and stuff like that.
Exactly
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly
the
right.
Minerals
So-
Council. Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent on us, or in the progressive side of the world, to be really uniting at this point, coming together
Absolutely.
and finding common ground to I guess decentralise, but to take away neoliberalism, to foster a world where there is no poverty, where there is not the same level of rampant economic inequality that's worse than the Gilded Age, worse than the time of the pharaohs.
Yeah.
What we've got right now.
Yeah.
yeah, we have to come together from all sides, put aside our differences and work together for a better future.
Absolutely. And you know, Australia shouldn't have 3 million people living below the poverty line in 2021. You know, it's outrageous. And all the solutions are there. All the solutions are there for the climate crisis. We just need to roll our sleeves up and get on with it. So, yeah, and there's nothing that's too small, or you know, people look at the local community and think it's too small or whatever. But every conversation counts. Every single conversation that you have is important, and you can carry these conversations into your everyday life when you go to the hairdresser, or when you're getting your coffee in the morning, or whatever. All these conversations, we're all learning, and we're all teaching at the same time with every conversation.
Well, Conley and I spend a lot of time in dialogue about this very thing. It's that, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, KB, but isn't it like your business in a way came out of your own life experience? Like, being a young person now, it's not all peaches and cream. Like, it's pretty hard to find a house. It's pretty hard to like operate educational debt and all that.
Well, the tiny house on wheels came out of housing affordability. Certainly, in the middle of my degree, which is when I jumped out at the end of my bachelor. From a business point of view, to do what I'm doing now, I couldn't have done it without the low cost that the tiny houses provide. And even though we're 2 years in on that and 4 years in on the other business, still super tough financially. And when you don't have the means to do things, it has you compromise quite a lot in life. So that's a big theme, I think, in my life. And
absolutely. And like in the 50s and 60s, people could get a house for like 3 years' wages or something like that.
What is it now, like 8 or 11 or something?
Oh, at least. I reckon it'd be over 10 probably. But you know, it's just like, it's impossible for young people to get into the housing market. It's not right. When certain people own multiple, you know, many houses, and some people can't even afford, a lot of people can't even afford one. So that definitely needs to change as well.
And jobs is an issue as well. Definitely.
Yeah, Kylie's from up in the northwest of Tasmania, and you know, a lot of the things that we experienced here in Allens Rivulet, Sandfly, and you know, regional and rural areas, that's exacerbated in certain areas around the state. There's political solutions to that.
Yeah, again, the job guarantee would have a huge impact on places like that as well. All right, so now we're coming up to your lovely place up here.
All of the wallabies will be looking at us in confusion. What is this futuristic?
They hear us coming.
That's right. Can this thing avoid roadkill?
That is a very good question, because I've watched one of your videos and you were asking a question at the council about roadkill, because Tassie's like the roadkill capital of the world.
It would be, and there are things you can do with you know, by having like audio barriers on the side of the road, but they're quite expensive for a local government to take on. So yeah, I mean, if technology can go some way to ameliorating that, the wildlife will certainly be happy about it, but so will I.
So there's videos on YouTube of Teslas like avoiding collisions, just the button on the end. That's park. Yeah, there's videos on YouTube of Teslas like avoiding deer or even ducks. There's one. It's at nighttime, and there's a this must be like a mother duck, and then some ducklings that are coming out onto the road, and the cameras pick it up, and it goes doo-doo-doo, and then the car just avoids it just in time. Right. So I'm not sure if the Tesla labelers have been labeling like paddy melons and stuff like that yet, but they'll get there for sure. Yeah. All right. Gideon, thank you so much for driving this electric vehicle today. It's been fantastic chatting with you, and I look forward to seeing all the amazing things that you've got planned for Kingborough Council in the future.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.